Okay, so this is how to turn a cheap and nasty Hobbycraft American style feather into a fairly decent quill. So first thing to do is to work out how far up you need to shave off the barbs of the feather so it's not going to get in the way of your hand. At the very least, you've always got to get rid of the weird fluffy bits at the bottom. And you just hold the knife at 90 degrees to the shaft and scrape upwards, and it comes off pretty easily. You'll probably have to tidy it up a bit afterwards because you'll get little bits of stubble, but it's easy enough to do. But main thing is, first of all, get the worst of it off. Now, on the other coloured feathers, which I've run out of, which is unhelpful, you can see quite clearly where you've scraped because it goes white. On this one, for some reason, it's orange up there, but further down the feather, it just goes grey. So you can't really see that on the end here, you've got this sort of shiny coating, and you need rid of that. And again, you just scrape it off at 90 degrees to the shaft of the feather. And the reason you want rid of that is because it's shiny, ink will just run straight off it and blob all over the page. But also you'll find you'll get little bits of it that ink will stick in. So it'll hold ink and then suddenly dump it all over the page. So you really do need to make sure you've got all of that off. And you probably can't see on the video, but it's sort of just slightly grey underneath there. If I kept shaving, it'd probably go white, but I don't want to completely ruin the feather. So, next thing, once you're rid of that, is holding it so the groove in the underside of the feather is on the underside. You cut the end off at about 45 degrees, and then turn it over, and you start the cut quite steeply, and then turn the knife so you're just cutting directly along the feather, about halfway along, and then you pull out all this manky stuff inside with a pair of tweezers, getting as much of it out as you can, because again that's going to hold ink and just generally be a huge pain. Bits of it will fall out while you're writing, and you just want rid of it all if you can. And you'll end up with that sort of horns arrangement. So the next thing you do is squeeze those horns together until you hear a little crack, and that puts the slit in the end of the feather. And then you make a curved cut from the side in towards that slit. You will find sometimes it will just crack. And you need to be very careful not to cut through the slit. So it's easiest to sort of shave it off gradually. And then you do the same on the other side. And then to get it to a nice point, I always use the scalpel because it's sharper. And what you will sometimes find is that it will split too much at the tip and the tines will go in completely opposite directions, in which case you just got to cut that bit off and carry on further up. And it's easiest to cut it with one of those little pairs of nail clippers because it gives you a nice square end. And you don't want your end too thick, because if it is, it will just blob ink everywhere. You also need to make sure that that piece is not too near that piece, because if that touches the paper while you're writing, it's just going to again dump all the ink on it. So if you have had to cut back, you'll need to cut the sides back as well. Trying to ensure that it stays curved. And that is also how, if it starts getting a bit blunt, that's how you would cut the next nib. But you would probably also make another cut in there to open the back up a bit. So that looks like my split is actually in the middle, so we'll give it a try. Usually, first go, whatever you do, you're going to end up blobbing ink everywhere. So let's give it a try. Yeah, that's putting far too much ink on the paper. So I was expecting that. But looking at it, it's kind of uneven. It's not very narrow at the tip. So just shave it a bit more, try and get a smoother curve. And a little bit of a knobble on the end, so gently shave that with the scalpel. So there we go. Probably a little bit too pointy that, so you probably want to cut it back, because that is, unless you use it very gently, I'm just going to flick it, the ink everywhere. But that's one of the benefits of this, you can just keep trying until you get it right.